dominate you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Community Connection. Dr. Worster, today we are honored to sit down with one of the most influential voices in education worldwide. His research on visible learning has reshaped how schools think about teaching, learning, and impact. With more than 25 plus years of synthesizing global evidence, Dr. Worster, this legend has challenged us to shift from what we believe works to what actually moves the needle for students. The man behind meta-analysis, the visionary behind visible learning, and an avenger of effect sizes, ladies and gentlemen, none other than Professor John freaking Hattie. Yeah! Let's go!
Hi, Nat. Hi, Eric. Howdy.
What's up, John?
John
That
Hattie,
was a bit over the top, yeah.
that's right. That's what we do
wasn't
on the
over the
Community
top.
Connection. I had to make it special for you. Are you in America? Are you in New Zealand? Where are you, sir?
No, I live in south of Melbourne, in Australia, on the Great Ocean Road, and it's a beautiful day. I can look out over the sea, and if I look carefully enough, I could probably wave to you.
Oh, that's awesome. That's all. I have not been to Australia, Dr. Worster, or New Zealand. We got to go. We got to go.
You should do. It's only a movie in 5 sleeps.
That's great.
A sleep in 5 movies.
I love it. I do. Well, John, we're gonna dive right in. Eric has got this fascinating question he's been dying for like a whole year to ask you. And Eric, no pressure, man. You ready to dig into some of this nerdy stuff? Let's go. Let's do it.
I am ready. And first, Dr. Hattie, I wanna say I just had a leadership class tonight, and I think they were all very excited that I was going to have a chance to talk to you. I want to shout out my colleague, Dr. Gabrielle Ryman, and Principal Anne-Marie Noonan. She's principal at North Fork Middle School. I think she's worked with you before, so they were all just very excited for this chance to have us interact with you. Our class tonight was on research, and I get pretty passionate about it. I know you look at meta-analyses. And I think a challenge we have is meta-analyses obviously rely on existing studies. But if there are social forces out there that make some kind of research more fundable or more fashionable, like SEL, for example, while other kinds of topics might get neglected, how does that skew the evidence base and the conclusions we draw?
All right. Okay, Eric, let's establish something up front. My mother spent a lot of time coming up with the name John. Okay?
You got
Honor
it.
her.
You got it.
Thank you. Secondly, to your question, look, you're absolutely right. There is a skew. My obsession has been achievement, and that has been the focus of the visible learning. But over the last 10 years, there have been other scholars who have come in and done what I've done with respect to achievement. They've done it to attitudes, to motivation, to self-efficacy. So the field is broadening to include those. And I'm the first to say, and I say this very, very often at the start of my books, it's not the only thing. There are other things, like a lot of students, probably 6 out of 10 in high school, don't come to school for achievement. They come for the social life, for the friends, because they have to. And I'm a winner for that. I want to take that. And the argument I put forward is that achievement is the outcome. You have to look at the culture and climate. You have to look at the learning. You have to look at the progress. They're all key parts of it. So the good news is for your research students, there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of good work to be done, complementing what I've done. But I make no excuse for looking at achievement, because it is one of the, I can't imagine what schools would look like if achievement wasn't part of the equation. But your critics are right. It is but part. I also note the economists of education have shown for many, many years that the biggest predictor of adult wealth, health, and happiness is not achievement at school. It's the number of years of schooling. So that's why I'm a little obsessed. Is your school an inviting place for kids to come to? So absolutely, you're right. It does skew just by looking at one.
And just a quick follow-up. We had Dr. Doug Reeves on before, and I asked him this question. I'm going to ask you as well. Are there good reasons why educators should be skeptical about education research?
Oh, I'd love to know what Doug said. But
He said yes.
the whole point of what we do is critique. And so skepticism, critique is the essence of research, and that's how it progresses. Like there was a famous philosopher of the last century, Karl Popper, who argued that all research, all science progresses by asking what evidence you'd accept you're wrong. Now, he was particularly influential to me because he was one of my teachers many years ago. Yes, that's the essence. Now, I think 20 years ago, there's probably hardly a principal in the world that looked at research. Now they do, and they are very good critics. So yes, I want them to be critics. I am.
Great, love it. Thank you, Nathaniel.
John, I picked up my son from. I always pick when I'm home and I'm not traveling. One of an honor of my day is picking up my son from high school. He gets out early. You know, our high schools and middle schools and elementary schools are staggered. I want to pick up my daughter, but she's too cool for dad to pick her up. She wants to ride the back of the bus, where real learning is happening. By the way, you know, real achievement is happening in the back of the bus for my daughter. But I picked up my son today and I was like, hey, I'm going to be doing this podcast with this legend, you know, this John Hattie guy. We're going to be talking about like, you know, learning and outcomes and achievement. And I asked him, I said, Evan, every day I ask you what you do in school and you always say nothing. And I'm like, what do you, and I'm like, you're bored every day. He's like, Dad, I'm bored every day. And, you know, and I'm like, and it pains me as a dad. I just want him to have that one day where he says, Dad, I can't wait to tell you what that is. Is that his age? Is that his, you know, was boredom just an epidemic in education? You know, what are your thoughts on that, sir?
I think there's two things going on there. Firstly, what a crazy question to ask a person.
I know.
Why don't you ask him, what was a challenge today? How did you react to it? You know, what didn't work today?
I asked him those two.
I asked him those two.
It's the questioner. I agree with you, John.
Yeah. But the second part of it is that, like, I work with a company here in Melbourne who have an app, and what they do in the app, one of the things is they ask kids on any particular moment, okay, let's stop, identify your feeling. And we have about 200,000 or 300,000 kids around the world who have done this app. And the dominant social and emotional feeling in classrooms around the world by a million miles is boredom. So your son's in good company. But then I want you to go a step beneath that. What is boredom? It's the absence of challenge.
Yeah.
Your son is not being challenged. And you've got to ask the schools, what's going on here? And Graham Nuttall did this great piece of work where he found 40 to 50% of everything taught in every class the kids know already. The work's too easy. It's just doing. It's completing it and finishing it and doing it. So, like, I had one son exactly like yours, bored out of his brain. Now, unlike your son, he transmitted that boredom into naughtiness, and he was the naughtiest kid in the school. He spent so much time in the principal's office that when we left North Carolina and moved to Australia, the principal rang and said, I'm going to come out and visit you because I know you so well. It's got the bonus of it. But you have to ask, what turns your kid on in terms of boredom? I bet he loves his video games and his sport and all that because it's challenging.
Sure.
And so what can you do at home to engage him in challenge that is socially desirable, constructive, doing all the kind of stuff? But then you got to, I think when you have that parent-teacher evening, someone's got to confront them and say, the kid is not being challenged. Now, I wouldn't say being bored because every teacher knows that. And quite frankly, they deny it. Now, here's the good news. When we show teachers the evidence of their kids' boredom, they fix it. They just don't appreciate that the kids are bored. They just keep transmitting and talking and performing. And so we need some indicators in our school, sort of those needles you were talking about, that says to a teacher, it's going down, kids are bored, they're turned off, challenge them. Now what they do is they give them more work, which sometimes is not challenging.
Yeah, right.
So keep talking to your son about what's challenging you at school, what's the subject that's challenged you, and push that button, find that teacher that challenges him and work from there. Like, here's the bad news. You, me, Evan, in their life of school has about 2 or 3 teachers who are going to truly dramatically change their lives, if they're lucky. The others are not bad. They're not bad, but they're just not challenging. And when you ask people, as we've done in our work, why that teacher, it's because that teacher turned you on to their passion. That teacher saw something in you didn't see in yourself, and that level of challenge and depth.
Yes.
So what Evan needs is something to go deep on, some challenge. There's got to be one teacher you can work on.
Yeah. John, I want to thank you for that. I appreciate that. And I think that his pre-calculus teacher kicks his butt pretty good. So I will give you
Okay.
that. So we'll keep with that. And I just heard what you said. There's got to be 2 to 3 teachers in his career that's going to be challenging him. But this is where I gotta ask John Hattie this question. So is it do we need my son to be lucky that he has a teacher, or do we really wish that he had a team of teachers engaged in this little thing called collective teacher efficacy that's rallying around what's best for him, not only for him, for all students? Is it education lottery, John, or is it a team based approach? And a lot of questions with this, so I can't wait to hear your answers, my friend.
Like the mantra in our work is that every student deserves a great teacher by design, not by chance. So it can't be a lottery. And I work, and what keeps me going is I see so much excellence. Like I was in your country last week, and amazing amount of excellence out there. And I've never ever worked in a school yet where there isn't pockets of excellence. Your point's the right one. We need to take more confidence in recognizing that expertise and scale it up. And like my argument about visible learning is that the very simple message is, does the school leadership in Evan's school, in anyone's school, have the courage to recognize those teachers where every student is making more than a year's growth for a year's input, is being challenged, is being invested in learning, form a coalition of success around them, and invite the others to join. The biggest problem in our system, the lack of courage. It is so much easier to talk about the curriculum, the assessment, the students. But hey, let's turn it on its head. Isn't it? I think it's remarkable when you see excellence, it's because of a teacher. It's because of a school leader. And we have plenty of them. Why is it that in our profession, we are the first to deny our expertise? And I think we have to turn that around. And then you say, the collective efficacy. It's the hardest work we do. It's the best work we do. It's the most impactful work we do. When you get groups of teachers, like this is incredible. You get groups of teachers working together, critiquing each other, critiquing their views about what progress looks like, what impact looks like, what moderation looks like, what the effects of lessons were looking like. And you get 3 to 4 times the rate of learning, and the kids are not even in the room. That is the most powerful thing we do. And so at your kids' school, I would hope that the school is work very strongly on that. The other point I want to make is that so often when we get teachers together, they talk about what they do. Like you talk about, what did Evan do at the tea table? Stop it. I think it's less about what teachers do, and it's more about how they think about what they do. So I just seen it many times when teachers think aloud about what they're doing, kids are the beneficiaries, but they talk about the content. Now, there's nothing wrong with content, but I want more of that thinking. I want Evan to be asked to think aloud. I want him to hear others think aloud. And they know that everyone thinks differently. They know there are multiple ways to get at the right answer, but they're never exposed to it. Like we have 20,000 hours of teacher transcripts. And when we ask how many times in those amount of hours does a teacher think aloud or a teacher ask a kid to think aloud, it's exactly 0.
Gee whiz, 0.
Classrooms are like teachers talk 89% of the time. Come on, we know what the problem is, but I do want to say that in my estimation in America, 50 to 60% of teachers are doing a great job.
Yeah,
It's just not enough.
I agree. Dr. Worster, we were talking off with our pre-op for John, and you had an interesting insight about what John just said about teachers owning their excellence. Eric, can you ask that outstanding question?
Sure. I guess the question is, like, do you think teachers are underestimating their excellence? Do you think sometimes they overestimate some of their skills? Oftentimes, I think if they do poorly, the instinct might be to blame the students for things that go wrong. Do you think teachers are great at estimating their own impact on their students?
No, not really, no. And that's my problem. And I want to turn this into a very, very specific finding here is that no matter how you look across all the research studies, It is the teacher, which is the biggest within school sales of variance.
Hmm.
And when you go a step further and you recognize so many teachers who are having such an incredibly positive impact on kids, and then you ask, which is my focus, what's the difference between those teachers and those that have not such a high impact? It comes back to how they think. But the trouble with teachers is they're too kind. They give credit to the kids. I take your point. If you have a bad experience, yeah, we can blame the kids. We can blame ourselves. But what happens when we have a good experience? We credit the kid. We never credit ourselves.
Exactly. I see it all the time. See it all the time. Yep.
Yeah. Let me give you an example. I just think this is stunning. If you go to the year 1900, what percent of the world was literate and numerate? 14%. In the year 2000, what percentage of the world was literate and numerate? 86%.
Wow.
Hmm.
Now, isn't that the most phenomenal finding of the 20th century, despite World War Wars and all that kind of stuff? That 14 to 86%. And when I ask audiences why, the typical answer is the curriculum, the spread of knowledge, communication, transport, textbooks. It's not. It's because of teachers. And they never say it. And we do. Now, having worked in the politics of education here in Australia for many years, I also know that funding follows failure. If you have bad performance, if you have difficult cohorts of kids, funding follows. I don't know about America, but here in Australia, where we do the worst are kids above average. There's no funding for them because there's no crisis around them. And so the other problem, and part of that crisis is we want to make the crisis such that it doesn't sound like the teachers. These groups of cohorts of kids, we've got structural problems, and politicians love to follow structural problems. I want to invest in those teachers. I want teachers to get up and say, this school is great because I'm a teacher. Like, look at the website. In fact, look at the website of Evans School. I bet it's got pretty kids, pretty sports equipment, pretty cultural events. Hardly any website in the world says come to the school because of teachers. We need
Right.
to stand up and say we have brilliant teachers.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not just in Australia. It's everywhere. Eric, to your question, when I look at data with teams, they'll have a formative assessment or a summative assessment, and I sit back and they'll be like, wow, I was like, your students did so awesome. You worked so hard. Your instruction was so on point. No, we just got good kids. Bless them. They're just good kids. And then I'm like, no, they're not that good. You're good. I've seen your kids. They don't even know how to walk in a straight line. You are awesome. No, we're not awesome. And then, John, if I see some data that's terrible in the tubes, oh, they didn't try. Oh, those kids, Eric, they just didn't care. It was a Friday before St. Patrick's Day, or, oh my gosh, they are just did. And I'm like, dude, own everything. Like, own it. Like, you taught it. Like, you can't blame the curriculum. Like, well, maybe you can. I don't know. You can't. You did it. Like, you did it. So, Eric, I think in general, there's generalities, right, John, that teachers don't give themselves enough credit on both sides, right? I don't know. So,
Hey, John, can I ask you a kind of a follow-up on this? Relationships are important. So none of us are saying it's unimportant. But do you think that students need to like their teacher in order to learn and succeed?
Well, firstly, I want to go back. You're right. Not only are teacher-student relationships critical, also the teacher ensuring that student-to-student relationships are critical. And both of those are done for a purpose. They're a means to an end. And like I keep getting comments, oh, this got great student relationships, etc. And I think that's wonderful. But the means to an end is so that in this class, it is okay not to know. It is okay to make an error. It is okay to be confused. And so one of my walkthroughs, one of my tests in schools is what happens in a class when a kid makes an error. Or let me go to the other extreme, the real extreme. What happens in a class when a teacher makes an error? Because they never do. So there's no role modeling. Learning is about what you don't know.
Yeah.
You go to school to learn what you don't know. And that's what needs to be privileged. And that's why I said earlier that all this starts with that culture and climate of the school. And it's primarily focused to me around what you don't know. So I'd be talking to Evan and saying, what is it you don't know? Now, here's the problem. Novices often don't know what they don't know. which is why
Sure.
they have us.
Mm.
But you talk about Evan in high school. I'm a granddad. I'm watching my grandkids starting in elementary school, and they're learning on day one. They're learning on day one that don't make an error. Only put your hand up if you know the right answer. It's all
Mm.
about getting it right, and that is devastating for some kids. So, student-teacher relationship. So it comes back to your question: can you learn something if you don't have? My best teacher ever, Mr. Tomlinson, was frighteningly strict beyond you can imagine.
Mm.
But he had this mission that every one of us was going to get through at the end of the year. And he never gave up on any of us to the point, sometimes it was rough and tough, but did I like him? I don't think that entered the equation. You had no choice
Mm.
in terms of whether you like him or don't like him. I'm still in contact with him 40 years later because he had that incredible impact. So, no, I don't think it's a matter of whether you have to like or don't like. It's a matter of whether you feel challenged. Like,
Yep.
here's one of the fascinating findings in meta-analysis on teacher credibility. Point 8. If you ask a kid, if you ask Evan before he walks into the class, is this teacher going to teach you something? And they say no. I don't care what that teacher does. I don't care what the relationship is. It's not going to work. But if
Mm.
Eric says yes, I don't care what that relationship is. I don't care what the climate is. Your kid's going to learn.
Correct.
Yes,
I agree 100%, John.
Mm. Mm. You know,
credibility matters.
it does matter. Let's get into a little bit with this. Like when I go out do my coaching with schools across America, one of the things that I love doing, John, is I show them like top 10 of the highest effect sizes that you've got, right? And I have them all mixed up, and I'll throw in like like a small class size, or I'll throw in like a couple little red herrings in there, and I won't put the effect size, and I'll have the audience rank them, and they never get collective teacher efficacy as the number one. Oftentimes they get they put, I've seen this, they'll put teacher knowledge of content as number one, which I always find fascinating, and I love it because then I'm like, all right, now we can kind of like break it down a little bit. But collective teacher efficacy, right? I mean, it's still up there, right? I know there's teacher estimates of student learning, CTE. I know it like drops from 1 to 2. It's still up there, right, John?
Yes, it is. Oh,
Man.
look, there's no question it's up there. And you think about what's going on in teacher collective advocacy, and that is critique and evaluation. Like my current work is trying to understand that deep thing that distinguishes those above and below. And it comes back to this concept of evaluative thinking. It's a particular way of thinking. And I love the word evaluative because it's got the word value in it. What is it we
Mm.
value? And then how do we know that we're actually making that difference? How do we know when we ask the 3 impact questions, what did you teach well? What did you not teach well? Who did you teach well? Who did you not teach well? And how much? And that way of thinking. And my partner, Janet, who's a professor of evaluation, says, look, it's easier to explain than that. Evaluative thinkers are nosy. They want to get inside Evan's shoes to understand how he's thinking,
Yeah.
where he's struggling, where he's enjoying things, where he's making progress. And you know those teachers. Sometimes they're not the best in the staff room because they're a bit nosy, but that's the essence of collective advocacy, that critique, that evaluative thinking. And as you said, increases the rate of learning by a factor of 3 to 4.
Mm.
But teachers think that it works when they're standing in front of the class delivering. And when they ask them to stand out of the class and work with their colleagues, that's a big ask.
Mm.
We talk with our colleagues about the social life, we talk about the football, we talk about lessons, we talk about kids, we talk about curriculum, we talk about assessment. We don't talk about teaching and learning, and that's what I want to happen.
I want that to happen too. And I don't know, I've watched all of your podcasts. I've just followed you for decades, it feels like.
Sure.
And maybe you've talked about this, John. So I apologize if I'm going to ask you a question that's already been asked. But I am a huge proponent of professional learning communities, PLC, done the right way, right? A structure, habits of intentionality. And I see a direct correlation between good structures of collaboration through professional learning communities and collective teacher efficacy. Where do you stand on this? Whatever 3-letter acronym, whatever wants to be called, like talk to us about that, John.
I remember saying to the DeFores many years ago when PLC first started, please trademark it. because it's
Yeah.
going to be abused. It's going to be misused. And now every time there's a meeting in some schools, they call it a PLC, and it's not. The reports were
It's
quite
exactly.
specific about what
Exactly.
happened. And
Exactly.
when you look at what they said about what happened, the overlap with collective efficacy is huge,
Yes.
huge. And yes, but I steer away from PLCs. I worry about collective efficacy. It's also when you meet together, we'll call it collective efficacy. Now, the trouble with collective efficacy, it's a pretty bad jargon word. Come on, let's be admit it. I prefer collective efficacy about learning because it brings the focus. But the challenge I'll give to you, the two of you, and to all your listeners, come up with a better name, come up with a better narrative about what that is. I don't want it to be called PLCs because it's an abused concept. But you're right, it is virtually the same. But I do look and say, can we come up with a better way of summarizing it? And what I'd recommend, if you haven't had it already, is ask that question of Jenny Donahue. I think is doing the best work in this. Have her on your show and put it to her. We want a better term to sum up what we're talking about here. Collective efficacy, too jargony. Obviously, the concept's right. PLCs, brilliant idea, being abused and misused. It's time to reorder
Well,
this.
we love acronyms in education, John. Come on now. We love our TLAs, right? We love our TLAs. I am fascinated with the All Blacks. We had a very good friend at college.
What is that?
Do what?
What's the All Blacks? What are you talking about, Provincio?
It's a rugby team, Worcester. Come on now. The greatest rugby team on earth.
Sorry, John. I don't.
It's got the longest, the highest winning streak of any team in any sport.
Yeah. Come on, Worcester. Yes.
Wow.
It's amazing. Worcester don't know, John. Just you and me, John. We'll stick to this, right? We'll stick to this.
You're right.
So
you obviously didn't get the message to wear all black today.
No, I did. I almost wore my All Blacks hat. But I am fascinated by their collective efficacy, right? I am fascinated by what that team does. And I'm sure you see correlations because I think you haven't just worked in the education space. I think you have worked in other spaces too. Just going back to that team concept, right? Not the rah, hey, let's do it for, whatever. Like really that evidence of their impact. I'm sure you've got metaphors abound, but tell us a little bit about what the All Blacks do that correlates to that collective teacher efficacy.
Yeah, and you're right. I have ventured out into the sport area. We work here, some of the team with Australian rules football, which is probably as obscure to Eric as All Blacks were. I'm a bit of a baseball nerd, so it's the same. We've worked with teams on that, and obviously looking at the All Blacks. And if you read some of the recent books about the All Blacks, it is very much about what you say. Like I remember, for instance, the top players, the captain, they're the last to leave the team room because it's their job to clean up afterwards. Now that doesn't happen. But the whole message is we're in this as a team. And they have a lot of team debriefings. It's like I work with the AFL. And what we found and what the All Blacks found is that the coaches, some of them spit and shout. Some of them are very good at giving instructions. Most of them give an incredible amount of feedback. But during the game, you haven't got time for that. And so the All Blacks realised many years ago they were brilliant at training, but they weren't so good as a game. And we found that here with the elite teams we work with. And recently, one of those coaches said a comment to me which stuck with me. He said, since we've been working with the visible learning work, I have reduced my feedback by 80%, and I've increased the effectiveness of my feedback by 80%. And it's what the players do is they build bonds about how did you understand? Well, firstly, did you hear the feedback? Do you understand it and can you action it? Whereas coaches typically, like teachers, keep pushing the feedback out. It's the same as the work we've done in schools. The teachers give an incredible amount of feedback, but it's not heard. It's not understood. It's not actionable. And so that's where the All Blacks are particularly good, is building up that relationship within the team so that everybody in the team feels confident they can speak without malice. And in teams, in elite teams, it's sometimes stronger than some schools where the senior players have all the say and the junior players are socialised to silence. That's not true in the All Blacks. And so that team bonding, that teamwork, everything's done in what we would call collective efficacy professional learning. And I recommend that even if you've never heard of them, picking up some of their recent works where people have looked at that team bonding is very, very powerful.
Yes, there's a Netflix special, Worcester, on the All Blacks. You got to check that out,
Oh,
man.
okay.
I will check that out.
You got to check
Hey,
that out.
John, you travel all over the world. What, right?
Too much.
Yes. What are some promising things that you see happening in education worldwide? Who's doing it right? What great things are happening?
Oh, I want to question the premise of your question first. Now, my argument is it's like in my political job here. I had to meet every minister, director general over the 9 years I was the head of a chair of a government agency. And every one of them, I said the same thing. Look, in your term of office, minister, it would be a badge of courage not to go to Shanghai, Finland, and Singapore. You have the best schools in the world here in your electorate. And sometimes they called me and I took them to those schools. And so I'm not a great fan of that comparison. But when I look around the world, I do worry in the worlds that we live in, the parts of the world we live in, our obsession with high achievement is killing us. It's permitting schools to cruise where they take kids above average and they don't add value. And I think that's a disaster. I think it distorts how parents think schools. Some of our best schools in America are in our poorest areas, brilliant
Yes,
schools,
I
but
agree.
you'd never know it from our current rhetoric. I'm a fan of progress to achievement. It's a different story. I look, for example, England's a fascinating case. 20 years ago, it was pretty mediocre. It was down around 25, 30th in the PISA study about where the US is overall. And we had a minister came in 10 years ago. He stayed in power 8 years and he changed the conversation from structures to classrooms. And England now is the highest performing country in Europe. And so and when I look at your country and mine, we're obsessed about structure. Like, heaven help us. Do we need to change the curriculum yet again for no impact? Do we need more assessments to put thermometers up kids' backside so we can find out where they're at? We need to have more discussion about investing in teachers, investing in creating time within the school day to have the collective efficacy. And we need the profession to actually be advocating for this rather than the structural things. And I'm reading Nick Gibbs' book about how he changed the narrative from structure to in the classrooms. It wasn't easy. It was resisted by schools, but it made a dramatic effect. So I look around countries that are doing that, and I see, like all countries, we go through waves. Like Wales had a really good period, Scotland did, but then they had a new minister, went back to structure. I've just come from the Netherlands where they've gone through the same kind of that. Your country, there are pockets where I do have that discussion. Talking in Kansas with some of the people, they really are onto what's happening in schools and investing that. Talking in other states, it's still about structure. Oh, we got to fix the curriculum. Oh, we're going to change the school timetables. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So there are pockets out there, but I don't think it's. But I do a lot of work. In fact, I'm off to Singapore again next week. I'm on the Prime Minister's Advisory Group. I've worked there for many times. It's a unique situation, but they do dramatically well. Like, let me give you a couple of examples. Part of the narrative is every school subject, maths, reading, science, everything, from age 3 upwards, is problem solving for which you need skills. We separate them, and we have this enormous fight between problem solving and skills. We introduce problem solving in maths when kids are around 10 or 11 and 12 and wonder why they fall off the bus. I like that. The other thing they do, which I think is fascinating, is that every teacher in Singapore is assigned a coach, not necessarily in the school. And at the end of the year, if the teacher doesn't make their annual increment, the coach is fired.
Wow.
I like that. That's some accountability right there, boy.
And the teachers love it. And the coaches, they laugh at me when I say this. They say, we actually don't fire them. We retrain them. We put them back in the classroom. Well, that's firing them. But this notion of that, when you look at what you do, what we do the same to teachers. We evaluate them. Why aren't we evaluating them to improve them? But we don't do that. And we say, no, that's not the job of evaluation. Well, I think it is the job of evaluation. And I think that the system should be. If it doesn't improve teachers, the evaluation system is wrong.
Correct.
I think that's some stunning examples we can learn from other countries to turn this whole dialogue around.
Yeah. Worcester, I love you, man, but like there are as many schools, like Finland always comes to mind, right, John? Like I've been hearing like Finland for years. But look, here's the thing. There are many schools in America that are in urban, challenging, economically deprived areas, and the schools are crushing it. And
Will you
there is
talk to us, Nathaniel?
yeah, and there is many schools in America that are crushing it, and we'll never know. Like we need to figure out and we never know. And you could take all those schools and put them together, and they'd be as big as Finland, but we never hear about it, right? And so, Louisiana, Mississippi, Massachusetts has been crushing it for
Tennessee.
years. Tennessee started to crush it, right? And it's just fascinating all around. But yes, I absolutely agree with that. We need a fundamental shift in the way we teach kids. And I think, John, there's a generational poverty of pedagogy. We teach how we were taught, right? We lead how we were led. And whoever has the checkbook ends up buying the curriculum and the programs and the this and the that and all these other. I read something that school boards, like something like 40 to 50% of school board training is vendor focused. So, I mean, it's like they're going to come back with hey, we got to buy all these things because we're looking for the silver bullet. There's no silver bullet, right? I mean, there's just practices and hard work and analyzing the impact of our practices, right? It's just over and over and over. It's not glamorous and it's not sexy. It's just hard work, John. I don't know. What do I know? I don't know. I have been on a formative assessment kick recently. And formative assessments, true formative assessments, John, what is it, 0.90% effect size? I don't know, something like that. Pretty darn high.
Yep.
It's pretty high. But trying to help people understand, especially our teachers and our teams understand that formative assessment is a tool for collective teacher efficacy. Can you just take a second to link I think there's an important link between formative assessment and collective teacher efficacy.
Yeah, and I want to make one slight word change here. And I know it sounds trivial, but to me it's critical. I don't believe there's such a thing as formative assessment.
Okay.
Now, Michael Scriven invented the terms 70 years ago, and he never used the word formative assessment. He said formative and summative evaluation.
Mm.
And the trouble with formative assessment is teachers think it's about the tests.
Yeah.
It's not. It's about the judgments they make. I want them to use the tests. I want them to do the noticing. I want them to use students' artifacts of kids' work. I want them to ask about students' learning. But formative assessment just brings it too narrow to me. Now, I know it's a trivial thing, but if you change your sentence there to formative evaluation, that's exactly the core of collective teacher efficacy.
So formative evaluation, and what I try to help teachers with is not just giving a little mini summative assessment that's got a bunch of multiple choice questions. It's like, what did we do? However we taught it, shouldn't we evaluate those strategies to see if our impact is actually working for kids? Because I guarantee, Eric, you didn't teach multiple choice questions for 3 days. I'm sure you used some strategies that you want to get impact on, John.
But I want you to ask the opposite question first. I've done all this assessment. What did I not teach well? Who did I not teach well? That's the starting conversation. We cannot afford to leave those kids and those topics behind. If you go the other way, in every single class, there's always a cohort of kids that are going to do well despite us.
Sure.
Why do we start with them?
There you go. Yeah. Love it. Love it. Love it. I don't think our assessments, our formative evaluations are different enough. We should have different types of questions on that formative evaluation to see, hey, did the above grade level learners get something out of this? Did our students that are struggling get something out of this? Do we get impact of our pedagogy on this? Oh, we didn't. Let's reteach. We got to figure this out. I'm with you, John. Let's do it. We're going to change the world. Formative evaluations. There you go. You heard it first on Community Connection. So with that, John, let's sum it up. We got 60 seconds over here to change the world. Are you ready? All right, here we go. John Hattie, what is one thing listeners on this show should keep doing, our educators and our school leaders should keep doing? What's one thing they should start doing? And John, what's one thing our educators and our listeners should stop doing?
Well, they should continue walking into classrooms and saying, my job here today is to evaluate my impact. Focusing, I think every teacher in the world joined the profession for one reason, to have an impact on kids. I want them to keep saying, that's my job, that's my job. And if you're not having an impact on the Evans of the world, you're not doing your job. So I want that to be the first focus. What was the second one?
What do we want to start doing?
I think we need to start esteeming the excellence that we have all around us. And I think the hardest thing in our business is then scaling that up. We don't have a debate about scaling in education. In fact, I can only find 7 articles ever written in the history of education about scaling up success, but I want to start scaling up success. I want us to be proud of the excellence. Oh my God, that word's never used. The excellence that we have already in our system and scale it up with care. I know that if I shame someone and then tomorrow I ask them to improve, it's not going to happen. So how do we have that debate about scaling up our excellence? And the third,
What do we need to stop doing?
this is the hardest thing in the business. We've written a whole book on de-implementation, how to get schools to stop doing things that don't work.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, this is the hardest. Look,
It doesn't have to be one thing, John. You can give us a list.
yeah, look, it's about focus, focus, focus. And I want that focus to be on impact, impact, impact on students, 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 on the excellence of teachers. So why do we, like, I've tried to argue with ministers, stop changing the curriculum. Stop it. It's not going to make a difference. We're going to love doing it. We're going to think we've made a difference. And all we do is we add more. I want to say, halve what's in the curriculum. That's your job. I want to stop aiming for everything. I want to stop arguing that we're preparing kids for their future. We're not. We're preparing them for now. They're going to prepare for their future. And so we've got to, I want kids to be kids. I want teenagers to be teenagers. And I know there's a price to pay for it, but we've got to understand the world they live in, and we've got to show them there is a better way. That's what we're in education. It is a moral purpose. So maybe we need to stop some of our resistance. Like, you've not mentioned the 2 letters that are dominating our discussion, AI, at the moment. I think it's going to be resisted dramatically because it's not going to be seen to improve how we teach. And our kids now are using it for good and bad dramatically. So stop trying to reinvent the old world and start saying, what is the world our kids are living in and how can we make it better? Because they're going to create our future as we get older. So we've got one chance to get it right. Let's do it.
He is changing the world. All right, John. So I've got one. I have a very easy entry point to your work in Visible Learning, the illustrated guide for our viewers who want kind of an easy entry. It's got some great illustrations filled with phenomenal knowledge in there. John, besides this and your many other books, how can people find more about your work, your writing, or your upcoming projects?
As you may or may not know, I have a contract with Corwin. They run all the Visible Learning sites. They've got a really good site with lots of information. I'm not very good on media and websites. I don't have any of that kind of stuff. So that's there. I think if you ask around your district about schools that have invested in a Visible Learning program, talk with them, create communities. There is a Facebook community for Visible Learning. Join that to hear what other teachers and principals are saying. I think there's a lot of messages out there. In the same way, there's a lot of misunderstanding. Some schools, like I had an email from a teacher recently where it's kind of diabolical how Visible Learning was introduced as a mandate in the school. You will have success criteria and learning intentions on every wall, but the kids understand nothing of it. That is badly implemented. So there's lots of resources out there. Probably the place I would start, besides that book you showed, is the Facebook community. Join it. It's free, costs nothing. And it just is teachers talking to other teachers and leaders about what they're doing in the name of Visible Learning.
Love it. And John, finally, what words of inspiration do you want to leave our educators around the world with who are striving to make a difference every day?
I want you to go home every night and ask what challenged you. Where were you successful? Where do you need to improve? And stop and then say, wow, I had an incredible impact today. We need to esteem the excellence, and we need to start with each teacher doing that.
Love it. Thanks, John.
John, I got to tell you, man, you are worldwide an ambassador for excellence. And I know you started out as a teacher, which I love. You know what I mean? It's just like, we forget that, the excellence comes from our teachers. But John, you have helped us, and hopefully the listeners of this show, just understand that the brilliance is in the building, right? The brilliance is in our building. And how do we cultivate excellence? And I'll tell you this, Eric, all the time, and I know you work in the PD world. Some of the greatest teaching is right across the hall from us, and we never get a chance to see them. We never get a chance to see them. That's some of the best PD we ever had. John, some of the best professional learning and development we'll ever have happens in that team meeting where teachers are reflecting and analyzing the evidence of their impact for every single kid. And I think maybe if that's what we can keep doing, oh my gosh, man. And it doesn't cost anything. It's just a little bit of time, man. It's just a little bit of time. But John, man, thank you so much for just being just an ambassador for excellence. And thank you humbly for joining us on